Can I help you? Take your hands off. Hello, I'm Scott Rogers. I'm going to be showing you the kyusho jitsu pressure points of the head, the neck, and the torso. The head, the neck, and the torso are the primary targets that we go usually after the arm points and the leg points, which were previously discussed. Reason for this being is that in the head, the neck, and the torso is the greatest chance to cause unconsciousness. In a self-defense situation, the one way to be sure that your opponent is finished or not going to be able to injure you further is if he's down on the ground, either unconscious or unable to continue fighting. We're going to cover the 3 levels of unconsciousness, this way it's clear. Level 1 is what's considered a TKO in boxing, where you strike a point, you'll see the person's arms drop, they get a little bit glazed in their eyes, and they basically cannot defend themselves. That would be a light shot to one of these points. Level 2 encompasses all of level 1, but the difference is their legs tend to give out, they drop to the ground, but they're still awake. And level 3 is complete unconsciousness. In training, it's sufficient to go to level 1. You strike the point lightly on your partner, you see him stumble a little bit, you know you're on the point. A little bit more focus or a little bit more power, you know you can easily take it to level 2 and 3. We're going to divide the tape into 3 parts. We're going to start in the points of the head, meaning the skull and the jaw region. Second points are going to be the neck, encompassing the front, back, and side of the neck, and the shoulder region. The third part will be the torso, front, side, and rear. Okay, the 2 things to watch out for, as in early programming, is angle, direction. Most important. We want to be exactly on the point, and we want to hit it in the proper manner. So if you're a little bit off, or if you're hitting it in the wrong direction, you will not get as much of an effect. The closer you get to center, the greater the effect. As far as the size of the pressure points, even though we'll be indicating them with a dot, are approximately the size of a $50. The good news is the bigger your opponent, the bigger the points. A lot of the regions we're going to strike in the self-defense later on are going to encompass 2 to 3 points. So imagine 3 points approximately this size. Very difficult to miss a target that large. Let's go over the bar. We're going to start with the first point. First point we're going to use, where the lip and the jaw come together, is called the mental nerve. Right in the corner of the jaw, there's a little hole there. If you look at a picture of a skull in a textbook, there's actually 2 little holes. It's called the mental foramen, and the nerve sticks out through there. This point struck on an angle 45 degrees down and towards the collarbone, and it can also be used to press to release the neck. Later on with an assistant, we'll actually show how these techniques are applied. Traveling along the jaw, we're going to make an imaginary line straight down his eye, right on the bridge of the jaw. Most people have a little indent there, a little notch. This point's called stomach 5. This point has 2 angles. This point can be 45 degrees up and in, or 45 degrees down and in, meaning you can strike it up or strike it down. There's a very common target in boxing. Usually they target the hook punch there. The problem with that is the hook punch, if you'll notice, is coming 90 degrees in, which is actually an incorrect angle. So sometimes it drops down or sometimes it comes up, and they get a good effect. But for maximum benefit, it has to come in a downward angle or an upward angle. We're going to try to continue along the same line along the jaw region, where the jaw comes to an end in the corner. Right? We're going to turn them a little bit here. Behind the jaw, we have a point called triple warmer 17. This is one of the most important points of the head and neck. The reason for this is this can be struck in an angle 45 degrees back towards the jaw. But when it comes to grappling, which we'll explore later, this point is very important because it's used with fingertip pressure to turn the person's head, setting them up for other techniques. So along the jaw region, we have the mental nerve, the stomach 5 point, the triple warmer 17 point. Now, as we go a little bit higher, right underneath the cheekbone, we have a point called small intestine 18. This point can be struck in and up towards the center of his head. It can also be pressed with fingertip pressure. And again, in a grappling situation, this point becomes very important. If we focus him in the center, in his upper lip region, right over here, we have a point that's actually a rub point. It's the only rub point on the head. When this point is rubbed, the person will be forced away from you. Let's say in a tight encounter, somebody's grabbed you, we rub it, it forces him back, and it tends to set up the other points in the head region. And the last 3 points we're going to cover is a cluster of points called the gallbladder cluster. The gallbladder cluster is 3 points above the eye. The first one's directly in line with the pupil, 1 inch above the eyebrow. The second point in the cluster is directly above that point in the hairline. And the third point is directly parallel to that point and 45 degrees to the first one in the hairline as well. In order to strike all 3 of these points, a palm strike must be used to try to catch all 3 of them. Generally, you get 2 of them. You try for 3, you get 2. If you get all 3 at once, person goes right down. If you only get 2 of them, you usually get a level 1 or 2, which we discussed earlier, where the person either falls or they're just stunned and their arms drop. Okay, at this time I'm going to introduce my assistant, John. John's going to help me demonstrate the proper angle and direction and some of the striking weapons that you could use to make these points effective. First one we're going to cover was the mental nerve in the corner. First application we're going to use is to twist the neck. So let's say he's grabbed you or he's locked onto you. It really doesn't matter what the attack is for now. We're going to use our thumb and we're going to press down at a 45-degree angle. If I was to grab his head and turn it and he resisted, nothing would happen. But when I press on that point, which we're going to turn him a little bit more, and press down, it allows the neck to be spun. This, combined with grabbing the hair or just holding the opposite side, can make a nice neck takedown, but could also turn him to set up one of the other points. So imagine a situation where he was coming forward and he was grappling or struggling, and you just turn his head. You stop his motion right there. He can't go forward anymore if his head is looking that way. As far as striking applications for this point, one of the best weapons that we use is this part of the palm. So if you look at your palm carefully, it's actually divided into 2 parts, the part where the thumb is and the part where the pinky finger comes down. And there's a little bone here. And what we want to try to do is focus that bone in this motion. And we focus it to this point, in and down, in a dropping motion. So again, this can be off of, he could be punching you, you could be blocking and dropping down on it, or you could just be coming up to the point this way, be striking an arm point first, coming down on the point. But this point is struck down and at an angle towards his opposite shoulder. So if we're using his side here, it comes this way. If we're using the other side, it's going to be coming in that direction. The next point we're going to go after is the one adjacent to it, the stomach 5 point in the corner of the jaw. This point has an up and a down direction. This point can be struck down with the palm, just like the other one, but it can also be struck in an upward movement. The general guideline is if your opponent is taller than you, you want to strike in an upward motion. If your opponent is shorter than you, you want to strike in a downward motion. The main reason for that is if he was a lot shorter, it wouldn't make sense for me to go down to come up when I can just drop down. And if he was a lot taller, it wouldn't make sense to reach past the point to come down on it. So it's a matter of convenience and the shortest distance between 2 points. The stomach 5 point, when struck up and in, you actually want to aim towards his opposite eye. So the angle is this way and back. One of the features of striking this point and a lot of the points in the face and neck region is he's going to be forced to take a step backwards. Generally, anything above his solar plexus when struck forces him to take a step back. Anything below his solar plexus forces him to come forward. So when you're setting up your combination of techniques, when you strike this point, you're pretty much guaranteed that the arms are going to be away from you. Because once he takes that step back, he cannot reach you any longer. Then he actually moves out of hand range into kicking range. And that's where the leg points will come back into it. All right, we're going to continue along. So we've done the mental nerve, we've done stomach 5. We're going to do triple warmer 17, the point behind the jaw, right here. This point, no matter what position you're in, fingertip pressure is going to turn his head and control him. As long as my fingers are here, he's in a lot of pain. I'm going to show it on the other side the same way. All it is a direction back to front, like you're pulling on his jaw. You pull and press. Now, this point can also be struck, let's say a punch was coming in with that hand, if we blocked, using the fist, using the pinky knuckle on the hammer fist, striking again in that 45-degree back to front direction. And in the rare instances where you get him dropping down a little bit, it can be struck with a punching motion because, again, you're maintaining that 45-degree angle back to front. So let's say you had him in an arm bar, you could shoot right in with the knuckles into that point. So we have triple warmer 17 back there. We're going to shift from the side. We're going to go towards the front. We have the small intestine 18 points. They lay just under the cheekbone. If you squeezed his cheeks and pressed, you'd be on them. These can be squeezed as in a grappling situation. If he grabbed, we could just use it to control him. Or they can be struck with what we call an inverted punch, meaning not an uppercut, but a straight punch using this part of the knuckles. So struck this way, underneath that way. So a situation might arise where his palms were on you, we covered his arms, and you strike in this way. What you're going to notice is this motion tilts his head back and sets up his neck points, which we're going to cover later for future strikes. Everything we do in pressure points is to set up the next shot. Most of the time, again, we're going to start with the arm points first, or the leg points, work our way into the head and the neck region. The head and neck is the most sensitive, so that's generally the finishing points. Everything goes well, you hit this point, he should drop. But if he doesn't, he's set up for follow-up shots, even the one under the jaw that we did before. The next set of points we're going to cover are the gallbladder clusters. That's 1, 2, 3 points. The only real way to access all three of them is to use a slapping palm motion. So we're not going to use a palm heel, we would only hit one of them. We want to slap. And the idea is, as he's here, we take our hand, we have to contact 1, 2, 3 at the same time to get a stunning effect. And even with the light force, you could see his eyes close, he starts to stagger. The advantage in this point is in a boxing situation, if his hands are up and he's covering his jaw and he's leaning forward a little bit, that may be the only thing that you have access to. So if somebody's protecting their jaw and their neck, even this part is covered, all you have is their forehead. Maybe with gloves on, they think that you can't hurt them, but slapping into that region is going to cause either a level 1 or a level 2 knockout. As you hit them, the arms will tend to drop, exposing other points. The last point in the head region we're going to cover is the one on the upper lip. This point is not struck, this point is rubbed. If he's grabbed you, or even if it's a closer situation like a woman, he's grabbing you tight, we rub in and down, and it releases him right off of you. It requires no strength, but it requires an up and down rubbing motion, very similar to the arm and the back of the arm point previously covered. So we come in with our knuckles and we rub. We'll do it a little bit slower, and you'll notice that as you do it, the head tilts back, allowing us to come in to the stomach 5 points, which if for this didn't drop him quick enough, this one would put him down. Okay, we're going to use the bob dummy. What we're going to do is we're going to show some of the strikes at a little bit of a faster pace. Some things to pay attention to when using pressure points: there's no cocking of the arm. We don't withdraw, we don't drop into a stance. Wherever our arms happen to be, we strike from there. The reason for this is we do not need power, we need proper angle and direction. The further your arm travels, the greater chance you're going to miss your target. So really what you want to do, if you're a few inches away from the person, you're almost guaranteed to hit what you're aiming for. Power is less important than angle and direction. So what we want is we want a nice relaxed speed. We don't want telegraphing motion, but we want to make sure we focus on the angle. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick one point at a time. The first one we're going to do is the forehead points. We're going to show the angle. Again, the angle is a slapping motion, bringing his head back this way. So if you had your hands up, you were arguing, you just slap in. Now, a real person's head isn't so shaking, so you would remain in contact. So as you hit, the head would go back. As the head goes back, either the person drops or you're set up for your follow-up shot. If you were here, that would set you up for the next point. So you're here, even if your arms are down, just shoot out in a slapping motion. And the idea is to connect 3 points of your palm. 1, 2, 3. And line them up. 1, 2, 3. And you want to try to hit them at the same time. So the motion's more of like this, very relaxed. And the wrist is kind of limp until you strike. So it's a whipping motion. So we're not doing a palm thrust. We're not hitting this way. We're relaxed. Our elbow is down, not up. And we're just thrusting forward. We're here and slap out. Next point we're going to cover, the side of the jaw, the stomach 5 point, right down, 45 degrees up and in. So instead of 45 degrees this way, we're just coming from underneath. And again, the elbow's down, the hands are here, up and in. Up here, up and in. 45 degrees. And again, a result of it with a real person, when the neck moves as you come up and in, the head's going to tilt back. Person should fall. If they don't, we've set up our next point right there. The point in the center, the rubbing point, we want to make a nice tight fist. We don't want to use one knuckle because we're going to miss. Almost like we're knocking on a door. Just like this. We focus with the middle knuckle. We take the thumb out of there. All right, we'll come from this side. And we rub in and back. So we'll turn them a little bit so we can see it. We're here, and we rub. Now, when we use a rubbing motion, if somebody was ready to punch you and you reached out to rub, you're going to get hit. Generally, it would involve him having 2 arms busy. either with a bear hugging motion or a double grab, or something where his arms were occupied so that you have the time to do that. It's also generally used from this distance. We don't want to reach all the way out here because then we can do our strikes. We're in very close, we lock on to the point, we rub and press back. A lot of times also we'll use it to set up the jaw point. We'll stretch them back and then follow with the jaw shot. So basically what we're doing is we're creating distance and pain and then setting them up with the next. The next one we're going to cover is the one behind the jaw, the triple warmer 17 point. When the opponent's facing you, there's very little use for this point except for the fingertip pressure because the angle is back to front. But we got to imagine that Bob has arms, and what we're going to do is we're going to block his arm and strike in a back to front motion using the corner of our fist. All right, so we're going to turn him a little bit. So we're going to block his arm, the point is here, and we strike across, catching him behind the jaw. Another way we can get at it is using the same knuckle pressure that we used here, but we're actually going to strike it this way with our foreknuckles. So if we wanted to hit it from the front, we would just clip it this way. As you struck it, it would turn his head, setting up follow-up blows. And the last point is the point under the cheekbones. Again, as shown on John, it can be squeezed and pressed, or it can be struck in an upward motion with either fist. He's here, strike straight up to the ceiling. It's not an uppercut. If you throw an uppercut, you're going to hit it and slide off towards yourself. Think of it like a punch, but instead of punching out, punch up with an inverted fist. So if you're here, up, right? Move in, strike, like you're going towards the ceiling. What we're going to do now is we're going to bring John up again. We're going to demonstrate one of these points, the point under the jaw. We're going to tap it as light as possible just to show you the effect. Now, we can't hit him on all of these points because it would be dangerous and there's no need to keep knocking him down. All of the points have the same result. How hard you hit the person depends on the situation, but generally the power of your arm is enough to knock out most individuals. Meaning if you were here, this is more than enough force. In a demonstration situation, we're just going to move a little bit. Real situation, you hit as hard as you want. Okay, as previously explained, the more pressure points you hit, the more damage that you do. So if he were to grab me in a real situation, I would be using one of the arm points, one of the body points, or one of the leg points before I came to the jaw point. What that would do is it would make it actually weaker. But what I want to actually just show you is how, with no setup at all, this one point becomes very sensitive. So as he grabs, we're just going to come from this position. I'm going to go slow so that I don't injure him. We're going to come up in the up and out direction. I'm going to have him bite down real tight so he doesn't hurt his teeth. All right, so we're going to look straight. He's grabbing. We're not going to use a setup. We're going to come in, and it's going to bring him down. We sit him up. We have a special revival that we use to wake him back up a little. All right? Yeah. Okay. Now, if this was a real situation, aside from the setup points, instead of this, the technique would be that. One thing that you really have to watch out for is, even if you're not trying to injure him, his head can still hit the floor. Here we're in the studio, we have mats, that's not a problem. Outside, you hit somebody. If it wasn't a life-threatening situation, you may actually want to grab him and make sure that their head doesn't hit. Because you may hit him lightly, but if that head hits the floor, you're going to have a problem there. It's the second hit that's going to do damage. So anytime you knock somebody down, whether you're doing a throwing technique or a pressure point move, they lose control of their body, and sometimes their head can go first. So again, this is not something to be practiced or played with. When we do it, we look for the eyes. So we're going to do the same thing very light, and we're just going to focus on his eyes. And when you look, that little reaction just tells you that you're on the point. The body stiffens, the eyes blink, you know that you're on it. You do not need to hit each other or whoever you're training with to see the effect. We're going to continue with the neck region. The neck is your primary target. Every single nerve in your body has to pass from your brain through your neck to, let's say, your heart, your lungs, your liver, to all the functions of your body. So the neck pretty much encompasses everything. Doesn't matter whether you're on the front of the neck, the side of the neck, or the rear of the neck. So any position you find yourself in a self-defense or fight situation, you'll be facing one direction where the neck is vulnerable. Extra care needs to be taken when striking the neck, because as you strike the neck, not only are there nerves, but there's arteries and veins and other structures that they're a little bit more delicate. So when we strike the neck, we use even less force and we use more care when working with our partner. We're going to go back over to Bob and we're going to mark out the points. And as before, we're going to bring John in and show you different techniques that you can use on these points. First point on Bob we're going to do is called Conception Vessel 22. It's the pit of the neck, the little hole between the top of the chest and the bottom of the windpipe. So we're going to mark it off here first. All right. This is the most important point in the neck. This point, no matter what position a person's head in, can be struck. If a person puts their head down in a boxing stance, their throat is protected, but this point is not. This point responds to fingertip pressure, as in a striking move. It also responds to squeezing pressure, as in thumb pressure or just pressing with the fingers. So whether you're in a grappling situation or a striking situation, this is an excellent point. This point is also known as the cough point because it gives a very specific reaction. When it is struck, the person will start coughing, their hands will come up to their neck, and if it's a pretty good shot, they will fall to the ground. Because you are not striking the windpipe, you would need a severe blow to do serious damage. So you can give it a pretty good shot without worrying about causing permanent injury. But with a very light shot, you will get an excellent effect. So again, it's called the cough point. If you work with each other, you'll know why. Very lightly, we just tap it, and you'll see the reaction. So we're going to stick with the front of the throat now. We have another point. We're going to follow, there's a muscle in the neck called the sternocleidoid mastoid muscle. This muscle extends from the collarbone to the base of the skull. We use this muscle almost as an anatomical landmark to find a lot of the points we're working on. The next point lies between this muscle and the tip of the windpipe. So you have the little Adam's apple, the little bump. Right between those 2 points is a point called stomach 9. All right? And this point is a very special point because it has 2 things going on. Number 1, we have the nerve. But number 2, we have something in there called a baroreceptor, which basically means it monitors your blood pressure and it lets you know if your heart's beating properly. It controls whether your heart beats faster or slower. When this point is struck, it tricks your body into thinking that your heart is beating too fast and it slows it down. In consequence, since your heart's not beating fast, it actually makes you pass out momentarily. They also call it a vasovagal faint, which is something that in medical terms, a lot of times people that have their neck ties too tight, they'll turn their neck and they'll pass out. And what's happening is it's actually pressing into that point, and as they turn, they apply more pressure. This is a very easy point to cause a knockout, but it's a little bit on the dangerous side. So when you practice, we tend to use blunted weapons, meaning the edge of the hand or the forearm. We wouldn't want to go in with our fingers, as we can do permanent injury in that region. All right, so we have the pit of the neck, we have lateral to the Adam's apple. Now we're going to go up a little further, very close to where the triple Warmer 17 point was, but on the underside of the jaw. We have a point called small intestine 17. This point is an excellent point to be used in squeezing applications, as in a choking move. And what this actually does is, this is the neck artery that goes to the brain on both sides. So as in a judo choke where you try to compress both sides of the neck, by simply reaching in and squeezing, you can apply the same amount of force as a full choke with very little effort. And when struck, it will cause unconscious. The basic angle for this point is up and in towards the opposite side. So if the dummy was facing, or the person was facing you, you'd want to strike it towards the opposite side of the head region. We're going to go back to this one for a second because we didn't go over the proper angle. For the stomach 9 point, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're coming in at a 45-degree angle towards the spine. And this could be a 45-degree angle going in an upward motion or a 45-degree angle coming in a downward motion. But it's not straight and it's not across. 45, like you were coming out the opposite side of the neck. Okay? As we turn them further, we're going to go into one of the better points called gallbladder 20. This point is located at the base of the skull. In most people, it's where the haircut stops. You'll feel a little hole there. It's a spot that you massage when you have a headache. In opposite, when we strike it, it tends to give somebody a headache and it makes them pass out. This point is there's a very big nerve in this region. When struck, it's actually one of the easiest points to cause unconsciousness. But again, it lies in the back of the head, so in a self-defense or fighting situation, sometimes it's not accessible. But again, if you can imagine a person punching or you moving to the outside, it becomes a primary target there. Okay, now, so far what we covered was the neck region. We're going to go into a little bit of the shoulder, like where the neck and the chest combine. Along the collarbone is another anatomical landmark that we look for because we use this to find our points. We have 2 points that actually work together. We have a point called stomach 12, which is in this big depression between the trapezius muscle and the collarbone. And we have stomach 11, which is on the opposite side of the throat point. So on that muscle, where this muscle comes down, right over here. So what we actually have is 1, 2, 3 points in a straight line, And most people aren't as big as Bob, and they're actually closer to each other on a real person. So if one was to go in with fingertip pressure, you would certainly activate one or more of the three. So again, we have a situation where you don't have to be exactly accurate. You don't have to look for just one point. You just have to find where the collarbone is, and this one is activated with fingertip pressure only. We don't strike this one. Fingers go in, we press it, it tends to buckle the legs or bring the person to the ground. The last point in this region is actually on the top of this big muscle. Right at the apex, the highest point, dead center. It's going to be a little hard to see, so we're just going to tilt them a little bit. Right over here. It's called gallbladder 21. This point is actually a branch of this nerve up here. Being that it's further away from the neck and it has a big muscle to support it, it requires more force. But when this point is struck, the person goes down to the ground. Mostly we use this point in a grappling situation. If the opponent was coming in to shoot at you, we use our forearms to actually strike into these points to stop his motion and then go into another technique. If we had our choice as far as striking, there's really no reason to go for this point because the other points in the area are much more sensitive. But if he was in a forward position, we couldn't access those. These points become very important. Some people, you can actually just squeeze this point and drop them. But if somebody's very developed up there, it requires a forearm or a fist striking down. And it's on a slight angle in and towards the chest, coming down this way. Okay, we're going to be bringing John back in again, and what we're going to do is go over the points we just covered on the neck and shoulder region, explain different ways to activate them. This way you get a better understanding of their use. First one we're going to cover is the pit of the throat, conception vessel 22. This point in a grappling situation can be pressed to control distance, and with severe force we can actually bring him to the ground. We're not going to do that to him though. The main use of this point is with a fingertip strike. Now it's a little bit different than a karate fingertip strike. We're not going to be shooting in this way. It's almost like a poking motion. So if I use his chest as an example, all we're going to do is this. Now the advantage of this motion is if I bring my hand here and he brings his hands up to block and I try to touch his chest, if I do it slow, he can slap it down. So as I come in, he's going to move as quick as he can, I'm going to move as quick as I can. He has no chance of blocking it. That's how fast this move is. So this means if his hands were down and my hands were down and he made any aggressive motion forward, it would be very easy to go into that point. It's an excellent setup point. It's excellent because it's a straight line to the target. It's excellent because it requires very little force. And there's another thing. The way we activate it, our hand tends to come on a 45-degree angle. In a fight situation, his vision will tend to focus forward towards my shoulder or face area. If he's looking straight at me, he doesn't even see this until it gets there. So if I was coming up this way, he sees it, maybe he can block. If we're in close and I shoot up this way, it's below what we call his line of sight. If he was grabbing me, he certainly wouldn't see it because his own arms would be obstructing his vision. So this target's in the center. It's a main target because it's a straight target, meaning we don't have to reach around, we don't have to make a circular motion, we just shoot it in a straight line. Right? So again, fingertip pressure using a strike, or we can use the thumb or the fingers to press to bring him down. Next point we're going to do is the stomach 9 point, lateral to the Adam's apple, between this muscle and the cartilage. The first application we're going to use is off of some type of an attack. We're going to actually take our thumb, place it in there, and very slowly we're going to squeeze, and we can bring him down with it. Again, when squeezing the neck region, exercise extreme care. You do it very slowly. Generally, all you need to see is that look, and then legs start to buckle. The main use for this point is this is one of our instant knockout blows, which anybody should be able to effect a knockout using this region. This one is struck mainly with the edge of the hand and the forearm. The main reason for that is if he turns his neck, if I line my pinky up with his ear, my hand fits perfectly into this region. So it's almost like this point was made for my hand. Any other hand formation doesn't quite fit exactly as well. So as he's looking this way, this just fits right in. Right? In karate, they call it a knife hand block or a shudo block, and we just shoot it in. So if he was throwing a punch, we shoot it right into this area, right into this area. If he was grabbing, we would start with an arm point, finish right in that area. Now, if we were using our forearm, if we don't want to be as accurate, we just take the whole forearm region and swing it in this motion. If you notice, it connects perfectly on a 45-degree angle, which is what we need, and it covers that point. The advantage of using the forearm is more safety in that I can't hit his windpipe. I'm basically hitting a big surface. And it's good for me because I don't have to be accurate. Instead of looking for the point and trying to place my hand, I could just swing my arm this way and be guaranteed of hitting something. So forearm blow is excellent. or if a little more training, the edge of the hand below fits into that point. And we can use thumb pressure with one or both thumbs to bring him down to the ground. Remember, 2 points are always better than one. If you squeeze one in, he starts to go. If you squeeze two at the same time, he would drop with even more pain. The next point we're going to cover is called small intestine 17. If you remember, it's at the bottom of the jaw where the neck, that same muscle, the sternocleidoid mastoid muscle, and the jawbone, there's a little hollow pocket there. And it basically lies right in this region. There's a V that is formed here. Now, this can also be struck with the edge of the hand, either a back arm blow or an inward blow. This becomes a very good technique when his body is tilted. If we brought him down first, this actually is very exposed to finish him off in this region here. What we also use this for is a choking technique. If he was coming in with a punch, we can squeeze both of these, we bring him to the ground, and instantly you see his eyes close and he starts to pass out from it. And what we're doing is obstructing the arteries on both sides of the neck at the same time. So again, we have a squeezing application, and we have striking application into the same area. All right, the last point we're going to cover on the neck region is the gallbladder 20 point, right in the back. And again, if you look at that muscle again, remember it connects all the way up here. It's right behind the muscle below the skull at the base. So as he turns, we'll show it on him, he's got a perfect haircut. Right where this little point is, that's the point, right there. Now, if you're facing him, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to pass all of these other points to go for this one. But imagine a situation where if he grabbed and punched and your arm was here already, as you brought it back, we would strike it in this direction. And generally we'll strike with this bone here or with our thumb knuckle here. And we'll try to hit it into the point. It's called a ridge hand strike. And we're here and strike back. It can be, if he was grabbing with both hands, we can bring him in and strike both of them together. Now another really good application for this is if we turn him. If we go back to what we did on the very first part of the series, we used the arm to turn him sideways. As we struck the arm point and he turned, the point back there becomes exposed. We're going to show that on the other side. Right now his point is lying here. I can't get to it. We hit this point, he's just turned and exposed it for me. So even if you're not behind him, you may be in front of him, situation may lend it to where you end up turning him, and that's the only point that's exposed. Because basically the rest of his skull is very well protected. There are points there, but they're not very sensitive, so we do not use this area. So this is our main point that we go for in the back. We could be struck with a palm, hammer fist, open hand strike, even a forearm strike, depending on your positioning. We're going to move into the shoulder and the collarbone region. Now, we had the conception vessel 22 point at the pit of the throat. If he turns his head sharply that way, you can see this little muscle bulge here. Right on the opposite side of this little tendon is what we call the stomach 11 point. With one fingertip pressure, we can put him right down to the ground. About 2 inches over from that point, you're going to feel a big hole right here, which we put on the Bob dummy. We had 22, we had this one. Now we're going to move over above the collarbone, and same thing, fingertip pressure brings him down. Now in a real situation, these points become most active when his arm is extended. It actually makes this hole deeper and stretches the nerve. So if his arm was down, he feels it, but as his arm extends up, he feels it a lot more. What's good about these 3 points, 1, 2, 3, is you don't have to look for one or the other. He grabs, you take all of your fingers, and you just shoot him in. Now I think I got 2 of them there, but it's possible I got all 3 actually. Don't try to pick one. Don't be fancy. Don't take one finger and try to hit the point. If you miss, you'll be left with nothing. All your fingers, go over the collarbone, let them go in, press down. So this is a pressing application. Okay, the last point on the shoulder region is exactly at the apex of the trapezius muscle. So basically we divide his neck and his shoulder in half this way, and we divide it in half this way. And this is where we're going. And we could actually press it and get some effect. Because this is a big muscle, the muscle actually protects and the point lies underneath it. So generally we want to strike it inward this way or using our forearm. If he was coming forward like to shoot to do the takedown, we would actually use our forearms on this point to stop him. Because of the angle, we may not knock him out, but what we'll do is stop his motion, which will allow us to set up something else. What we're going to do is just show this point the effect of it. We're going to have him throw a punch, we're going to block it, and we're just going to put some downward pressure. And the thing to watch for is his legs. Watch where his legs go. So as he comes in, we come down, and we drop him down. Okay, and we'll tend to give him a head rush. And remember, we knock him out on this side, we revive on the opposite side. Right, we massage, slap, okay, and bring the energy back up. Okay, we're going to continue with the points of the torso. As far as pressure point and self-defense training in general, the torso points are the least important. The reason is the following. As far as actually trying to injure somebody, the torso region is actually the most dangerous because all of the vital organs are there. But it also contains the most amount of muscle and in some people the most amount of fat. All of the points and the nerves lie beneath the tissue between the muscle and the fat. So if somebody has a very big stomach or very strong muscles in that area, you have to penetrate whatever they have, whether it's muscle or fat, to get to the point you're going after. That's why points of the head and the neck are best, because no matter how big somebody is, their jaw is still unprotected. What we try to focus on are the points that even in people that are muscular or have a lot of body weight are still effective. One area is the rib area. No matter how big their stomach gets, their rib still has very little tissue covering it. Between each rib, there's a pressure point. Right below the line of the chest, in a straight line with the nipple, we have 3 points in a row that we're going to cover. The reason we do all 3 of them is because we don't try to pick one, we strike all 3 of them at once. It would be very difficult to pick one rib. So in the 6th rib, in this space, they call it the intercostal space, between the 6th and 7th rib, we have a point called liver 14. And between the 7th and 8th rib, we have a point called gallbladder 24. And right below the chest line, in the 5th space, we have a point called stomach 18. So when we look at the bob dummy, what we're going to find is directly below the nipple line, in line with the chest, is the first point. This is called stomach 18. One rib below that is the point called liver 14, and directly below that is gallbladder 24. So we have 3 nice points in a row, and if you remember the $50 analogy, you would enlarge these points. That basically gives you a big region to target. So what we have on each side of the body, a nice big circle below the chest. Generally, this can be struck with any hand technique. We can strike it with our palm strike, coming straight in. We can strike it with our punching techniques. We can strike it with hammer fist, which is a very good blow. We can strike it with elbow strike, coming in. We can also use kicking techniques, meaning if we can imagine a punching technique and we block his punching arm, we could bring our foot up and put the ball of the foot right into those points. These points, for best effect, are struck in an up and in motion, but they can also be struck in a down motion to make the person come forward. So basically we're left with 2 angles again, going up and in and coming down and in. Punching straight into them will have an effect, but not nearly as much. And generally we want to always target to the center of the body. If you notice, 45 degrees is a big number. If his body is here, we want to always target it towards his center, coming in this way. So whether we're going up or down on the 45, it's to the center. When we're on this point, we're targeting it towards his spine, towards the center. So generally we want to put the power deep inside of his body. The next region we explore, we have big circle here, big circle here. We have this area right over here. We have the solar plexus, which lies between the border of the chest and the top of the stomach muscle. All right, anybody that's been hit in the solar plexus knows it knocks the wind out of you, paralyzes the diaphragm, makes you fall down coughing. And directly above that, we have a point between the nipple line that's actually called the heart-stopping point. This is one of the points where in Little League Baseball, sometimes kids get hit with the ball and their heart just stops for no reason. It's on this spot. Basically, these 2 points work together because if struck in an upward angle, you will hit one or both of them and it will affect the lungs and the heart region. If struck in a downward angle, you should take a big step backwards because the person's going to vomit on you because it affects the stomach. So you're either coming up or you're coming in a downward motion. And generally, if you were coming up, you would use the palm and catch up under the rib cage. And if you were going down, you would focus down with a punch. And again, this region could be kicked, but it's a little high up. You might not want to lift your foot that high. You can execute a side kick into the area or come up with a roundhouse kick to get that angle going up. The rib points are more important because if somebody, you see like Bob has a nice 6-pack here. Somebody has well-developed stomach muscle. The top of the stomach muscle is the strongest one. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 abdominal regions, the top one is very thick, the next one gets thinner, the next one gets thinner, and the bottom one is the thinnest of all. So that means he has the most protection here. So if he's not ready for it and you come in that area, the point is excellent, but if he's a trained fighter or he has his stomach muscle tense, he can actually take a shot in this region. The rib point, no matter how much he tightens his muscles, it's going to have the same effect. So in this region, primary target is going to be these 3. Now, the last target on this side, directly below this point on a diagonal going down, right, we're going to mark a point off right here. On a person, exactly where your elbow touches your ribs, right in front of it is a point called liver 13. This is the free end of the 11th rib, which means it's a rib that's not really attached. This point struck properly can actually pierce the kidney and cause the person to bleed internally, so we have to be very careful when striking this one. This one too is struck in an upward 45-degree motion. So it can be struck with a palm, with a knee strike. Somebody was punching, you can place an elbow into that point. But again, you have to be very careful because a nice hard blow is going to take the rib, which isn't attached in the back, and push it in towards the kidney region. Exactly opposite this point. So if a person has the elbow here, in front of the elbow was this point, behind the elbow is a point called gallbladder 25. This point lies directly over the kidney, right? If everybody feels behind their back, you'll feel a notch there, like a little hole, right where the love handle is, just behind the elbow. And this point is either pressed or struck in a 45-degree upward motion. So if a punch was coming in and you blocked, you would strike in an upward motion with the palm. And if the person had you in a hold, you can strike back to front in an upward motion. Or you could dig your fingertips into that point as well. The last series of points that we cover are below the belly button. Below the belly button, between the belly button and the private area, we have 4 points in a row. Right? We don't have room to mark them all off, but we have one here, one over here, and we have basically one other one that's really important below that. And that gives us, again, a nice big region to strike in the bladder area. A good part about this, as we discussed earlier with the stomach muscles, the lower abdominals are thinner than the upper ones. So even if a person tightens their lower abdominals, they cannot take that blow. And if their bladder is full, they're going to pee on themselves. So again, step back if you hit that area. These points struck 2 angles, 45 degrees up, as in a front kicking motion. That's a prime target for the front kick. Or 45 degrees down, as in a punching. Maybe somebody was choking you, punch into that area, brings their head forward for a follow-up blow. In pressure point striking, we do not strike the groin area. There's a main reason for that is no matter who the person is, no matter what country they're in, if you strike a man in that region, he's going to go like this. So basically, you've wasted your shot. But what you'll notice is the bladder area, even when I protect here, this is still exposed. So if this is my target, he may think it's the groin and protect it, but I'm still going to hit what I'm aiming for. The groin is a great target, but you have a very limited chance of striking it. And also, the groin is what we call a pain target. It hurts a lot, but if a person's resistant to pain, they may not feel it. No matter whether they're resistant or not, when you strike the bladder points, they're going to arch forward, exposing their jaw and their neck for follow-up techniques. Okay, we're going to bring John in. We're going to demonstrate some of the body points and some of the techniques. There's a concept that's kind of important that we want to pay attention to. If his arm is outraised, his body points become sensitive. So imagine the nerve on his body connecting up into his arm, and when you lift it, this whole area becomes stretched out. When the arm is down, the neck becomes more sensitive. So if we were in a situation where he was grabbing and he was down, I would probably go for the neck region. But if I hit his arm first and stretched his arm back, that's when you'd want to come into the body area. So for maximum effect, we want to try to stretch the person out. Now, let's go with the first set of points that we did. We had the 3 points below the chest, approximately here, 1, 2, 3. And again, they're struck in an in and upward motion. So if he was to grab, you could pretty much, he has his arm extended, shoot this right in. And a very light tap, and his body starts to dip forward. We don't need a lot. Palm comes in this way. One of the primary targets for this is if he's throwing a punching technique and we block, and we can drive the punch or drive our elbow into that region. Dead in the center, we have the solar plexus, and we have the heart point. And again, we strike in and up. So if he was coming in with a punch, we blocked. If we wanted to shoot in and up, we would catch in an upward motion going towards his head, catching underneath his rib cage, this way or to the heart point. Or you could actually try to catch both of them, in and up. Now, being that he's shorter than me, I would not use this technique because I have to dip down. But most likely your attacker is going to be larger than you, and the angle should be perfect there. So again, remember, the person's taller, strike up. The person's shorter, I would use the other angle, which is this one striking down. And what you're going to notice is as you come in, his head comes forward. As his head comes forward, he's set up for one of the other techniques. So we have the solar plexus region, we have the rib cluster points. We're going to go to the elbow points, the ones next to the elbow. His elbow's on his ribs. In front of it, we have the liver 13 point. And let's just move it this way. Behind it, we have the gallbladder 25 point. We're going to start with the rear one first. He was grabbing, let's say we're here, we need to release. We could actually just push our fingers in, or we can strike it to make his body arch backwards. The points in the front are similar to the rib cluster points in that they're struck in and up with the palm, but it's a very good application for a knee strike to fit in. So we're going to just turn him a little bit. So either you've blocked it or you've trapped him, and we could put the knee right into that region, shooting up that way. So we have the liver points on the side, we have the points in the back. The last area we have is basically below his belt. The best way to find it, if a person's wearing jeans, where the button is, that's point 1. And everywhere below that, you have 2 or 3 more points. It can be struck in an upward motion with a knee or with a front kick technique, or it can be struck in a downward motion. If he had both arms on me and I just wanted him to let go, I can shoot down, make him come down that way. This point becomes very important because when we go back to body motion, everything above his chest is going to make him step back. So let's say we found ourselves in a situation where we struck one of these points and he moved backwards. I can't hit him with my hand again, but when I come into the bladder point with the kick, not only am I going to be able to hit him, but it puts his head back in range for other shots. So basically I'm working him like a puppet. This is an important point because this point brings him forward. So basically I strike a point, I move him back, I strike a point, I bring him forward. Or if he was throwing a punch, let's say I wanted to get that point behind the jaw really good, maybe I would slap into that area. As he goes down, that sets my angle for the point behind the jaw. So sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to find a point that you really like to use that works very well for you. You're going to set up your self-defense techniques based on how to access that point. And one way to get behind them is to step to the outside, bring them forward. Now you have the point behind the jaw, you have the point behind the head that you can follow up with. We're going to be demonstrating one of our instant knockout shots. Where we're going to be targeting is the stomach 9 point in the side of the neck. And what we're going to be using is our forearm. The reason for using the forearm is with little training, the swing of the forearm is a very powerful blow, and it doesn't have to be as focused as, let's say, using the edge of the hand or even the fingers or a punching technique. With this motion, this could come after blocking a punch, this could come off of a grabbing. For his safety, we're just going to demonstrate it off him grabbing. This way, we minimize the motion and nobody gets injured. So we're going to have John grab nice and tight. We're going to focus on this point. We're going to use the forearm, and we're going to bring him right down. All right, once we maintain grappling position, both arms are in position to strike him. So rather than bringing him to the ground with a throw, we're actually going to do a knockout technique involving the area around the temple, which are some points that we haven't really covered. We're going to slap. We have the temple, the corner of the eye, and the bridge of the eyebrow, which forms a nice big circle that's just going to get slapped. And on the other side, we're going to use the rich hand to strike gallbladder 20. From grappling position, as we're searching for a move, this hand is free to strike here. This hand is free to strike here. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock up, we're going to bring him down, and we're going to show the basic knockout, and he's going to drop. Okay, the last point on the shoulder region is exactly at the apex of the trapezius muscle. So basically we divide his neck and his shoulder in half this way, and we divide it in half this way. And this is where we're going. And we could actually press it and get some effect. Because this is a big muscle, the muscle actually protects it and the point lies underneath it. So generally we want to strike it inward this way or using our forearm. If he was coming forward like to shoot to do the takedown, we would actually use our forearms on this point to stop him. Because of the angle, we may not knock him out, but what we'll do is stop his motion, which will allow us to set up something else. What we're going to do is just show this point the effect of it. We're going to have him throw a punch, we're going to block it, and we're just going to put some downward pressure. And the thing to watch for is his legs. Watch where his legs go. So as he comes in, we come down, and we drop him down. Okay, as previously explained, the more pressure points you hit, the more damage that you do. So if he were to grab me in a real situation, I would be using one of the arm points, one of the body points, or one of the leg points before I came to the jaw point. What that would do is it would make it actually weaker. But what I want to actually just show you is how, with no setup at all, this one point becomes very sensitive. So as he grabs, we're just going to come from this position. I'm going to go slow so I don't injure him. We're going to come up in the up and out direction. I'm going to have him bite down real tight so he doesn't hurt his teeth. All right, so I'm going to look straight. He's grabbing. We're not going to use a setup. We're going to come in, and it's going to bring him down. We sit him up. We have a special revival that we use to wake him back up a little. All right. Okay, at this point I'd like to go over the proper revival techniques. The purpose of the revival techniques is to wake your partner up if you do a knockout, But most importantly, it's to make sure that he doesn't have any adverse effects. What can generally happen if you knock somebody out, they will wake up on their own. They won't just stay asleep forever. But when they wake up, they're going to have headaches. Their stomach's going to hurt. They're just going to feel almost like they have a hangover. With the proper revival, you're restoring energy, basically that you took away with the strike, and you eliminate that effect. The first type of revival is what we call arm revival. Basically, any of the arm points that we strike. When you strike it, what we're going to do is we're going to actually stop energy to that point. So we hit it, the arm goes to sleep. Now, he's feeling a pulsing right now. That hurts. The way we wake it up is we hit the exact same point with an open palm with approximately half the power with a slap. And then we massage the area. And we repeat that. Slap and massage it. And after you do that, he should have full use of his hand again. So the arm revival is basically simple. Whatever you hit it again. But you hit it with half the force. And instead of hitting it with a focused area, we hit it with a flat palm and we just massage the area. Flat palm, massage the area. And that'll bring your partner's arm back. This way when you're training, you hit those points, you can practice it more than once. As far as the head, the neck, the body, we do a technique like we did. We strike, he falls down. All right, he'll tend to just be laying down basically. The first thing we want to do is we want to sit him up. So we grab him by the head. Okay, now if he's really out, he won't fold his own legs, so you're going to fold his legs. We want to keep our knee in the base of his spine. We want to keep our hand on his head. Now if we struck him on this side, we want to revive on this side. If we struck him on this side, we revive on this side. Where we're going to be reviving is right next to the spinal cord. There's something called the bladder meridian. I'm going to show it on myself actually. Not over here, a little bit over, right in this line. This is called the wake-up nerve. Similar to the arm points, we're going to slap it and massage. Slap it and massage. At this point, he should be awake. He may still feel groggy, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our thumb and forefinger, we're going to place it at the base of his back with the spine running in the center, and we're going to run our hand up his spine a couple of times. In Chinese medicine, they say all energy in the body is stored in the kidney region. And when you do this, according to the theory, you're bringing the energy back up into the head. Medically, most likely, you're just stimulating the nerves that go into the neck and head area, and it's waking him up. But either way, the function is what matters, not what causes it. After you finish that, to restore more energy, we're going to start with the hands. Again, in acupuncture and Chinese medicine, each finger controls a different part of the body. So for example, the pinky finger is considered the heart. The ring finger is considered what they call the pericardium. The index finger is the large intestine. So what you're going to do is you're going to pinch, starting at the pinky finger, and pull. Pinch, pull. You should feel like a popping sensation. If anybody ever got a Chinese massage before, this is what they do. They massage the points, they pop the fingers, and what that does is it wakes up and stimulates all of the nerves. And that covers the revivals. Okay, this finishes up the series on point location. In the first series, we covered the arm and the leg points. In this series, we covered the head, the neck, and the body. As explained before, don't do this at home without proper supervision. Always have an instructor on hand that knows how to do the revivals. And if you are going to work with a partner, exercise extreme care, very light contact. Remember that this is designed to work together. While the head and the neck points are the most fascinating, the ones that make people fall down, it's learning how to use the arm points and how to integrate the arms, the legs, the head, the body together that makes this a workable system. So again, the head and the neck points are the ones that everybody's fascinated with, but it's really learning everything that's going to make you a better martial artist. Whatever technique you're doing, it's going to involve striking somewhere that we've done today. If you're punching to the face, if you're hitting to the stomach, whatever you're hitting, alter it. Start working the pressure points. Pay attention to the angle and direction. Martial arts or self-defense is a variety of hand positions. We have palms, punches, elbows, all different angles that you can access that you can use to make these points more effective. So, rewind the tape, look at it, find the angle and the direction, and then see what hand technique that you like to use to fit into there. And that's going to make your self-defense or martial arts system a better system for you to use.